worst thing that could happen is for them simply to kick the can down the road. If they just kick the can down the road, it'll just continue to represent a cloud over the Defense Department. And that's the last damn thing I need right now.
Congress returns to work today, and with the upcoming holidays, there are just weeks to negotiate a budget deal to avoid this proverbial fiscal cliff. It remains to be seen if Congress will kick the can down the road, as Secretary Panetta warns, with a short-term deal, or will they reach a true grand bargain, given how far apart both parties were on how to raise revenues and reform programs like Social Security and Medicare. We shall see. Joining me now on the Republican side, Wyoming Republican Senator John Barrasso. He's chairman of the Senate Republicans Policy Committee, and he joins me now. Senator, let me ask you this straight-up question. Who's in charge of negotiations on behalf of the Republican Party right now with the White House?
Well,
is it John Boehner?
Yeah, I think the president is the only one that can sign the agreement. John Boehner needs to have an agreement that the House of Representatives will pass, and I think whatever the two of them agree on will pass the Senate. So I'd expect that it's going to be John Boehner working along with the president, and I'm sure Mitch McConnell will be very closely involved in the discussions with Leader Boehner.
But you don't believe a deal should come out of the Senate and then be introduced in the House?
Well, I think the elections are over. We need to find solutions to help our country move forward in a positive direction. And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says, that the biggest threat to our national security is actually our debt. We need to get the spending under control and get people back to work.
All right, I want to talk about this issue of taxes and tax rates, and I want to get you to respond to something from not exactly someone who's known as a liberal thinker here. Take a listen.
It won't kill the country if we raise taxes a little bit on millionaires. I really won't, I don't think. I don't really understand why Republicans don't take Obama's offer to freeze taxes for everyone below $250,000, make it $500,000, make it $1 million. Really? The Republican Party is going to fall on its sword to defend a bunch of millionaires, half of whom voted Democratic and half of whom live in Hollywood?
So I ask you the question that Bill Kristol put there. Are you going to fall on your sword not to raise taxes on people that make over $250,000 a year?
Well, I think there's a difference between raising tax rates and raising tax revenue, and I want to get overall tax reform. But, no matter who you talk to, they will tell you that raising taxes on that group is just a small drop in the bucket of what our deficit is. It's less than 1/10 of the deficit, so it really doesn't solve our problem. But I don't think we ought to be doing things that I believe will hurt the economy. We need to get people back to work.
Well, his point was, though, that tax rates were much higher in the Reagan years, were higher in the Clinton years, and both of those decades had pretty good economic growth.
But it's such a small percentage of what you need to do in terms of really getting the spending under control.
$1 trillion over 10 years? $1 trillion over 10 years is a small number?
It's $100 billion where this president has had deficits of over $1 trillion every year. So it's about $1 out of 10, Chuck. Our biggest problems are the spending on Social Security, on Medicare, and the president's upcoming health care law expenses that are going to be coming every year, adding much more than what you could be gained by raising taxes. I don't think it's a good idea to raise taxes on anyone at a time like this.
But can you really talk about tax rates right now if you don't have an agreed upon revenue number that both sides agree to on what should come out of out of the tax code changes? So if it's $1 trillion over 10 years, which seems to be, that'd be halfway between the $800 billion that Boehner put on the table and the $1.2 that Gang of Six came up with. So let's go $1 trillion, $100 billion, $1 trillion over 10 years. Don't you have to agree to that number first before you decide what the rate is?
Well, I'm not going to negotiate this on television with you, Chuck, and I don't think anyone would. What we're going to have to do is come up with a solution to help get our country back in a financially stable condition. We have a $16 trillion debt. It is unsustainable. It's irresponsible. We need to work together. The elections are over. We need to solve these problems, and I believe we will do that before the first of the year.
And just to go back to the Senate, you don't want a deal to come out of the Senate before it comes out of John Boehner?
Well, we're going to have to get something that the president will sign and that the House will pass. And I think if you get that, that will then ultimately have enough votes to pass in the Senate.
All right, Senator John Barrasso, Republican from Wyoming, thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank you, Chuck.